Hi, everybody. I'm Selena Rezvani, and you are joining Women and Work Culture. This is a live stream all about helping women rise at work. And today we are talking about my number one favorite leadership topic that exists, and that's negotiation. Our guest today is the fabulous, the awesome Fotini Iconomopoulos. She is a fellow negotiation author and teaches broadly on this subject. We're so happy to have you today, Fotini. Welcome.
I'm so thrilled to be here. I'm glad that we could finally find a way to collaborate.
Yes, we found it. We did. And a big, huge welcome to our community. We have so many joiners today from all over the world. I see a LinkedIn user from New York, Dina from Canada. We're so happy to have you. Unique Quality Training Services from India. Kurt from Omaha. Nice to see you, friend. Daniel from Zimbabwe. Wow, look at the reach we have here. We're so excited to learn right along with you today from Fotini. So I hope, community, you'll send your questions to us. What are you wondering when it comes to making negotiations just a little bit better in your life? Send us those questions and we'll do our best to get to them. I want to fluff your pillows a little bit, Fotini, and tell people about you in case not everyone knows you. Fotini empowers executives and teams on subjects like negotiation, communication, and persuasion. She's also an instructor of MBA negotiations at the Schoolic School of Business at York University in Toronto. That's some pretty awesome street cred, Fotini. She's the author of the brand new book, and you see this poster behind her, Say Less, Get More. That's provocative. We met at an executive women's summit in 2019 and have some very kindred interests. We hit it right off. So I'm so happy to have you today. Fotini is passionate about helping people develop confidence to take on whatever challenge is in front of them. And she's especially passionate about doing that with women and disadvantaged groups. So let's dive right in today and ask you this first question. Why a book on negotiation? Why was this a must write for you?
It's because I was asked to. That's the answer is that, I've had people all over the years go, when are you going to write a book? And I was like, yeah, sure, someday. And it was HarperCollins who noticed something online and said, we think you have a book in you. And I went, okay, let's figure it out, because I wanted to find ways to serve my community. Even when someone says, we want you to do this, you don't say yes unless there's a passion for it. And, people over the years have asked me, can I sign up for your MBA class? Can I come and take one of your corporate workshops? And I'm like, well, unless you work for the company or unless you are enrolled at the school, you can't. So how do we get this information into more people's hands? And a book seemed like a rational way to do that.
Yes, it's a really practical vehicle, isn't it, to get the word out and share your message. Dina's loving that they reached out to you and you made it happen. I want to talk about a really provocative line in your book and ask you to explain it a little. Power isn't always obvious. Boom.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
So I had so many students over the years come see me during office hours and go, well, if I don't take their offer or if I tried to negotiate with them, aren't they just going to give it to the next person on the list? And that's when I say to them, but they're talking to you for a reason. And it's the same thing that I hear when I'm working with clients. I work with a lot of manufacturers who have to negotiate with large global retailers, and they're going to go, oh, they're going to delist me or they're going to get upset with me. I said, but they're giving you that time for a reason. They are super busy people. So if they are carving out the time in the day, it's because you have some power, and you got to dig in a little bit more to understand where that comes from. Yes, sometimes it comes in very obvious places, like size can be one thing, brand equity could be another, resources that people bring to the table. But you also have to think about the perceived power in addition to what are the resources that you bring. You as an individual, people want to talk to you. You have unique experiences, you have a unique intellectual capacity, persuasive skills. All of those things are what people are carving out the time to talk to you about this particular matter. And I think that in itself is always underestimated. Relationships are another really big part of the puzzle that most people just completely ignore. When I was working many years ago, when I was working for L'Oreal, back in manufacturing, I had to negotiate with Walmart buyers on a regular basis. I didn't always have the greatest scorecard. I didn't always have the best numbers and data behind me. Sometimes launches didn't go nearly as well as we expected them to. But because of the relationships we had, because of the trust that existed between me and the people that I was working with, they knew, you know what? I know Fotini is going to do everything she can to make this successful. I have faith in her. So when she tells me something, I'm going to believe her. And I want to find ways to work with her. So those relationships may not be the most obvious source of power, but I dedicate an entire section in the book to them because they are some of the most powerful pieces.
That's awesome. And your first point in particular hits me deep. I think it would probably hit many of you deeply also, which is around you've already got a seat at the table, right?
Yeah.
Don't discount your value, your leverage in the situation. It's very easy to do that sometimes when you're negotiating with an employer. There's a great question that came in from Anissa I'd love to address. She says, my nerves get the best of me when asking for a raise. How do I compose myself? How do you get that demeanor piece right?
Yeah, so I mean, this comes up all the time. You're not alone. This happens to everybody because it's our ancestral brain coming into play when we're faced with a stressful situation. Our heart starts to race and our breathing starts to get more shallow. And I talk about channeling the mental pause button. So, what can you do to just give yourself a moment and allow the rational thought to come back in? For most people, it's something really simple. It's a meditative breath of breathing in for 4, holding for 6, and out really slowly for 8. For others, a Harvard study, one of my favorite studies, talks about how reframing can change your behavior. And actually, Dr. Kelly McGonigal talks about this a lot in her book, The Upside of Stress. So by telling yourself something like, I'm excited to finally get a resolution with these people. I'm excited to show these people what I'm capable of. I'm excited to share with them my expertise. If you can just tell yourself that, regardless of how you're actually feeling, you will change your cognitive abilities. There are studies in computers that measure these things. Speech tests, math tests, singing tests show us when we can reframe, you actually get much better results. So if you can pump yourself up, have a positive mantra, take that calming breath, I guarantee you will get much better outcomes.
That's beautiful. And I would challenge everybody listening, what's an area right now where you're maybe feeling a little nervous to make a bold move or to take that next step forward? How could you reframe those nerves? I know one of my favorite in my own life is to kind of say to myself, this is proof I'm pushing my edge, that this is scary, that this is uncomfortable. I'm not stagnating. I want to ask you a kind of different question, a little more of a personal question, Fotini, and that's how have you dealt with a no in your life? For most of us, we have to accept we're going to get some of the no's when we make a bold proposal. How have you handled it?
One of the tips I go back to over and over again is asking questions. So it's very easy to take no and move on. But no is not the end of the negotiation for me. It's just the start. It's the trigger that goes, okay, instead of I can't, I think, how could you? So I actually ask questions. How could we make this work? Under what circumstances could that happen? This happened just a few weeks ago to me when I was negotiating for a new mortgage for my home. And they said, well, we can't, this is as low as we can go. I said, well, how could you go even lower? Under what circumstances would that change? How many banks do I need to speak to get better rates to come back to you and find one that's going to work better? And it saved me the hassle of actually having to go and make those other phone calls, because then they went, well, we can go 5 more basis points. And so as a result, I got a much better deal out of it just by asking the question, what else can you do to make this happen? Under what circumstances? What magically could change to make that come true? And that starts a dialogue with people and makes them more solution oriented.
I love it. And yet, for so many of us, right, our reflex is to not do that. It's to slink out and feel defeated and like, oh, I knew this was a risk. Look what happened. So I love your reminder there. Ask those probing questions. What is the worst that's going to happen
Yeah,
from
I mean,
going a little deeper?
well, that's the thing. I think most people understandably operate out of a place of fear. Like, I don't want them to hate me. I don't want them to rescind the offer. I don't want them to get upset. But if you're asking a question, it's a less aggressive way to keep the conversation going, right? It's not a hostile boxing match type of scenario. It's curiosity. And who's going
Yeah.
to penalize you for curiosity?
Yes, yes. There's something disarming about inquiry, right? It's not a demand, it's not aggressive, especially if you ask it with true curiosity. I think that's great. How about confidence gains? I want to talk about getting confidence gains as a negotiator. We all want to level up. No matter who we're negotiating with, we all want to be just a little better at this. What do you think is the difference maker? How can we get more confident?
It's funny. So it sounds so cliche, but practice makes perfect. So, I tell my students all the time that negotiators aren't born that way, they're made. And they go, "Oh, well, it's easy for you to say, you've been doing it all your life." But the fact of the matter is, it would be a waste of time for them to sign up for my class if I just said, people are born that way, you're done. So it's finding those little opportunities every day to be more conscious of finding your mental pause button. Can you call your telecom company or your cable provider and try and negotiate a better rate? They're not going to disconnect you for trying. So are there those opportunities? If you really want practice, spend time around children, because I think anybody who spends time with kids knows that they are the world's greatest negotiators. So if you can think
Yes.
about using your negotiation skills with them, you'll get to see it play out in real time. And then the other thing is, when I'm working with consulting clients, so folks who bring me in to help them through those high stakes negotiations, we actually practice, we role play, and we think about what else could they possibly say? What kind of questions are they going to be asking me? How are we going to manage this particular situation? And so much of it is plotting out what's going to happen before it actually happens. So, and I use that same rationale when I'm talking to my MBA students, and I go, if you're preparing for a large salary negotiation that's high stakes for you, take the time to practice in front of a mirror, or practice with a friend. Get that muscle memory in your tongue ready so that it's not like verbal diarrhea coming out the very first time you're trying it
Yes.
out. So that makes a huge difference in terms of confidence, because this is now familiar to your brain, instead of having that shocking moment that makes the brain go, "Oh no, what do I do? New trigger. I don't know how to handle this." If you've predicted some of those things, or you've got a question in your back pocket should things go awry, you're going to feel much more calm, and you're going to be able to be much more composed.
That's such a mindset shift, isn't it? That sense that, wait, I've been here before. This is not a brand new conversation. It gives you that feeling like I've been here before. I can navigate the unexpected. Here's a great question from Helen. Helen, thanks for joining us. Any advice for those who are in the very early stages of their career? It's hard to be confident when you lack that experience, but you're also really ambitious. Love it, Helen. What do you think, Fotini?
Oh, I love getting questions like this. I love speaking to women's groups at universities, especially because that's what they're all worried about. They're like, I don't have work experience, but what do you have? Do you volunteer somewhere? Have you been doing some interesting extracurricular work? All of those are still applying skill sets. You may not be getting paid for it, but you can still demonstrate that you're doing things. And then I also want you to think about the fact that we don't hire based on skills, we hire also based on potential. And so when you see that job description that has these 10 things on it, if they were actually looking for someone with all 10 things, they'd be underpaying them. So
Right.
and studies show us too that men are less likely to hold themselves back. They'll go, "Oh, I've got 2 things. Great, let me try it out." Whereas women are going to go, "No, I need 12 before I can even apply." So we need to change our attitudes a little bit and demonstrate, here are the skills and the potential that I have, my aptitude for learning, my hunger and passion for this, my ability to put in the time and effort and seek out mentorship and all of those things. So talk about what you're capable of, not necessarily just what you've done.
I love it. I think that's a bigger attitude change than we give credit. Instead of focusing on what don't I have, what do I have? What is uniquely me? What do I bring to the table? Those affirming things. And we have a question that's come in that I think is taking a kind of different angle at this. I think it's really interesting. But any ideas for how to adapt negotiation strategies to a work culture in an organization, maybe to make it more of a friendly place to negotiate?
Yeah, I mean, anybody who's seen me speak live before knows I'm a huge fan of Robert Cialdini and his book Influence. He just re-released it with some additional pieces in it as well. And one of the things he talks about in it is likability. And likability in negotiation is extremely valuable, but not necessarily for the reasons that people think. So people assume they need to buy their likability, because we all want to be liked. We want to get along with people. We want to feel like part of the tribe. That's our ancestral brain coming into play. But what happens is people will give others stuff for the sake of being liked. It's, I don't want them to hate me, so I'll just do this thing that they want me to do. And then you're wondering why you're burned out and people are constantly piling on more work to you. But what we need to be thinking about is how to use likability more strategically. We actually like people who are similar to us, and it could be something really ridiculous. It's, hey, you love wearing red? I love wearing red. We love people who pay us genuine compliments. And I say genuine because we can sniff out somebody who's being disingenuous. And we love people who are cooperative. So asking a question, being curious about somebody, letting them do the talking, all of those are things that are demonstrating cooperative behavior. And as a result of that likability factor, now I'm going to want to deal with you. I'm going to want to find solutions with you. In fact, Cialdini cites one study where they took two groups of MBA students, and they told the first group, get down to negotiating right away. And as a result, 55% of them managed to close a deal. Now, that's not too bad. They told the second group, however, spend a few minutes getting to know each other first. And in that group, 90% closed deals. And not only did they close deals, they closed better deals. They closed deals that were on average 12% more financially attractive. Why? Because they were likely trying to find ways to work with each other instead of against each other. And so when you think about that context in the work environment, in the culture, you're going to see people being more curious, being more solution oriented, being more cooperative. And so when I'm running training programs for large corporate cultures, Fortune 500 companies call me in and ask me to run these workshops. What they bring in with the intention of, well, we need her to help our team be more strategic and more profitable when they're dealing externally. A byproduct of what happens is they have better conversations internally because they learn better communication techniques. They learn how to ask better questions. They learn how to be more empathetic and think about people from their perspective instead of simply thinking about our own perspective all the time. So I'd say you can subtly work some of these skills and strategies into any work culture, even if they go, well, we don't negotiate here. Trust me, you do. You just may not realize that you do. So you can practice some of these techniques every single day.
I think that's great. And I think it's only going to become more important as folks return to work, that there are cultures that allow you to advocate your needs, which might look different from the person next to you, their needs, and what they require to come back to work and feel engaged and safe. So I hope more cultures adopt that kind of thinking. I want to ask you about something else that was featured in your book that stood out to me, and it was, your emphasis on saying people over spreadsheets. Tell me about that. Some of our Excel lovers might, question that a little bit.
So I've mentioned this now a few times because people are so important in negotiations. And everybody assumes if I have all my data and if I tell them all the reasons why they should be doing this thing that I want them to do, they're going to go with it. But unfortunately, that's not how people function. You can have the greatest data in the world. But when I'm dealing with high stakes negotiations, I can't just slide a spreadsheet across the table and go, we're done, right? You're going to go along with exactly what's on there. That's not how people do things. We interpret things the way we want to see them. We have bias. We have self-serving biases that happen everywhere around us. So if you can just pause to go, how is this person viewing that? What is their personal experience? What's driving their behavior? What's the motivation behind what they are doing or how they are behaving right now? It allows you to actually have more power because you now are acquiring more knowledge. The more you understand about those people that you're dealing with, the easier it's going to be to come up with something that can frame it in a way that's going to be presentable or something they're going to want to consume. But it also gives you this ability now to connect with people in a very different way. And now, again, because of that likability factor, they're going to want to find ways to deal with you. But if all you're doing is shoving data down their throats, they're going to come up with data that's going to bolster their position. If you ever took statistics in school, you know that data can be manipulated every which way. So we can't just assume that the data is going to speak for itself. We need to think about the person. You're not dealing with a company. You're dealing with one individual in that company. How is that individual's day going? What challenges are they facing? Are they on the brink of getting promoted or getting fired? Do they need this to go really well? Have they had a really bad day? Are they waiting for their carpool person to pick them up and they don't want to deal with you right now? Is it first thing in the morning and they're not a morning person? All of those things come into play when we're factoring in those higher stakes for folks. And so when I'm working with clients, we do a deep dive into who are you dealing with? What is driving them? Who influences them? Who do they listen to or who do they not listen to? And all of those things will factor into a strategy.
That's brilliant. And I think it's very easy to sidestep doing that and say, I'm going to come up with a killer proposal and it's going to be full of data and compelling statistics. And then we forget, but how do they think and operate? How do they process information, right? Are they, really humanistic oriented, or are they very logical? How are we going to stand in their shoes before we make this pitch or proposal? And I think that's so important. So I love your reminder to do that, not just for the little things. Do they seem crabby because they didn't eat lunch? Maybe I shouldn't do it now. To the big things. Do I know they're really worried about financials or something else? And maybe it's not an opportune time. So think about them so you can switch your request from me to at least we. We're going to benefit.
And that doesn't mean losing sight of your own objectives. You're always going to know those. You're going to have them in your back of your mind, but you're going to frame them up in a way that's going to be appealing to them. Because most people hear, well, when we start thinking about I'm going to get lost in the fray. And that's not true. You're just repackaging things up.
There's a great question that's come in around negotiating work-life kind of culture, work-life integration. Do you have any thoughts around negotiating that biggie in our lives?
That it's such a tough one, and I don't think there's a magic answer to it, but I will say I don't believe in balance. I believe in harmony. So can I make these two things work in harmony with each other? And I'd say one of the things for women specifically that comes to mind for me in this instance is we're generally people who want to serve others. If you're in a role where you don't want to say no to somebody when they ask you for something, whether it's your boss, your peer, or your kid, your spouse, you want to help as many people as you can, but yet that if you do, you're going to be spreading yourself too thin and you're going to be burning out. And one of the reasons why this comes up so much is, again, this is kind of another Cialdiniism. When someone says thank you to you, if you've done something nice for them and they say thank you, one of the natural instincts that comes up is to say, no problem. Well, if it's no problem, then I guess I'll come back and ask you for more. If you've said it's not a problem at all, then I don't mind imposing on you again because it's actually not an imposition. So how are you managing that moment of power that you have? Are you dismissing it and saying it's no problem? Or are you taking the opportunity to absorb that power and use it to your advantage by saying something like, hey, I'm sure if roles were reversed, you'd do the same for me. Or by something as simple as, I appreciate that. But by throwing it away and going, it's no problem, you're inviting them to increase the burden on you even more, no matter who it is in your life, both at work and at home. So it's about making sure that A, you're not throwing away those moments, but B, also asking the questions when they do ask you for something. Like, look, I've got a lot of other things on my plate right now. How does this rank in terms of priority amongst these other things? Again, by being curious, they may not realize you've got 5 billion other things on your plate. They might go, oh, no. Keep all your attention on that project. That project is way more important to me than this little thing. I'll find someone else to do this one. I didn't realize you were still working on that. So it's about asking that question, even of your children, when they go, we want to go to the park. Well, which is more important to you, having your favorite dinner or being able to go to the park? There's not enough time for everything. So which would you prefer? So it's really about creating conversations with people instead of just taking on and taking on and taking on without any reprieve.
Wow. Does anyone else feel like, wow, Fotini just looked into your soul and saw that maybe you dodge compliments too, or, brush off that praise That's not just a compliment. That's not just an atta girl or an atta boy, but it is a demonstration of your value. Why diminish it? Why diminish it? And I think you've really just pointed out something so important to us, that when we say no problem, it almost translates to no effort. That took nothing, for me
Yeah.
to do. And we all know that is not true. That is not true. I want to ask you, as you think about, let's say, a working woman out there who is hesitating to ask for a raise and more responsibility, what would your advice to her be?
It breaks my heart to hear stories like that, to hear anybody hesitating. I'd say one of the best pieces of advice I could give is to have what I call a feel good folder. And this came up because I happened to be, I think in Arkansas or something like that, working with a client, and we were both trapped in the hotel, kind of working side by side after our project was done. And she was like, "Oh, I'm getting ready for this personal evaluation thing. I can't think of what I've even done this year." I go, "What do you mean? I've been working with you all year. You've done this and this and this and this and this. You've done amazing things." She goes, "Oh yeah, I have." And it took an outsider to remind her of those things. I said, what you need to do is you need to take inventory of all these things. And when the easiest way to take inventory is when it's happening in the moment. When somebody pays you a compliment, when they send you an email saying thank you, when there's a big win to celebrate, when they say, "Wow, great job on that thing," when they ask you to join some type of volunteer thing because they recognize that you're doing great work. Put all of those moments into a folder. I literally have an Outlook folder where I go every time I get a compliment, a review or something like that, I put it there so that you have in chronological order what you've been doing all year, how you've been contributing to the organization. And not only how you've been contributing, but how other people are recognizing that contribution. So then it becomes objective. It's not your opinion anymore. It's other people, testimonials from others that you can bring credibly
Yes.
without sounding boastful. It's going, they said it, not me. So now you have this collection in this feel good folder where you can go and say, "Hey, I wanted to share with you something I'm really proud of. Here's all the things that have been happening this year. What can we do to now advance my career even further? How do I build on all of that stuff?" So you notice I went back to the question stuff as well. So have that kind of folder. It's almost like your armor. You're ready for this moment because you've bolstered yourself, you've built yourself up, you're stepping on that folder and rising onto a platform that may not have existed before if you had not recognized it. So what are those ways that you can kind of accumulate all of those feel good moments and put them in one place?
Yeah, that's so important. And guess what else? It feels awesome when you're having a bad day to
Yeah.
read that inventory of where you've really shined. And I know, as somebody who keeps one, I promise if you try to commit it to memory, you'll forget. So jot it down, jot it down. It is so important to have that. And I love that you remind us these are like testimonies from other people, you know, treat them as such, not
And
just
and
not
to
just
add
an
on
offhanded comment. Yeah.
to that, don't be afraid to ask people for testimonies. Like I just wrote a LinkedIn review or recommendation for someone the other day because I did some work with them. I referred somebody to another piece of business. Don't be afraid to ask those people, "Hey, how have I helped you?" And collect those things, put them out there on public record. And then it's going to, again, be more objective information that's out there in the universe that can help lift you onto a higher platform.
So beautiful. As our one quick final question for you, Fotini, do you have a parting truth bomb when it comes to getting this negotiating thing right?
So I'm going to go to the title of the book, which is Say Less, Get More. Shut up. Stop talking yourself out of these moments and take a second to pause and think first before you talk yourself out of a deal.
Amazing. Yes, don't tell yourself no before they do. Thank you so much, Fotini. We can feel your passion and drive around this topic. I know I can. I know I've also taken away, you have to know your value. So
Yeah.
much of these conversations start with you knowing your value, like you know it, like you know it, like you know it. Everybody, you can stay in touch with Fotini. You'll see links in the comments to her website, to check out her amazing new book, to her Instagram and Twitter. So please do connect with her in those ways. I hope you'll also stay in touch with me. Join my Quick Confidence newsletter. It's 26,000 people strong, and we are boosting confidence every week. Check out my LinkedIn learning courses as well, so you can be that fierce self-advocate in your own career and life. Thank you again, Fotini. Thank you to this wonderful, engaged, bubbling community. Remember, no ask, no get. So stay well, everybody, and lead on.